License and registration, please.
Yes, officer. Here you go.
Is this your vehicle?
Yes.
Malik Carter felt the stop before he saw it. Red and blue lights splintered across the cracked windshield, flashing against the hood of his mother's old Toyota like a warning flare. He eased the car to the curb, heart thudding, palms already slick. He hadn't been speeding. He knew that. The dashboard clock blinked 9:42 p.m. The street was quiet. Single-story houses, porch lights glowing soft and yellow, the smell of cut grass hanging in the summer air. A shadow filled his side mirror. The officer leaned down, hand resting too close to his holster. Malik kept both hands on the wheel, fingers spread, just like his dad taught him. He swallowed. "Step out of the vehicle." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. Instinct kicked in before fear could stop it. He tapped the screen, camera rolling, lens tilted low but honest. The red light blinked, recording. "What's the problem, sir?" Malik asked, voice steady in a way his chest didn't feel. The officer's eyes flicked to the phone. Something hard passed across his face. "You got a smart mouth for someone who matches a description," the officer said. The street seemed to lean in, listening. Malik felt every house watching, every window silent. "Description of what?" Malik asked. The officer smiled without warmth. "You." The second cruiser pulled up behind them, tires crunching gravel. A door opened. Another set of boots hit pavement. Malik tightened his grip on the phone as a hand closed around his wrist. Too tight, too fast, and the camera jolted upward, catching a badge, a jaw clenched in irritation, and one quiet, lethal sentence. "Turn that thing off." Malik didn't. And somewhere already the video was uploading. Malik Carter noticed the patrol car before it noticed him. Or maybe he noticed it because he was trained to. The cruiser sat half-hidden under a streetlight that flickered like it couldn't decide whether to stay on. Malik eased off the gas anyway, eyes forward, shoulders loose, both hands light on the wheel. His mom's voice lived somewhere in his chest. "Don't give them a reason." His dad's voice followed close behind. "And if they stop you, don't give them anything else." The lights came on 2 seconds later. Malik pulled to the curb in front of Mrs. Alvarez's house, the one with the ceramic birds nailed to the fence. Gravel crunched. The engine idled. His heart didn't slow. He rolled the window down before the officer reached him. "Evening," Malik said. The officer didn't return it. He leaned in, flashlight cutting across Malik's face, the dashboard, the empty passenger seat. The beam lingered too long, like it was searching for something it already expected to find. License and registration. Malik passed them over carefully. The officer studied the license, then Malik, then the license again. "You live around here?" the officer asked. "Yes, sir. 2 blocks over." The officer hummed, unimpressed. "Step out of the vehicle." Malik's stomach tightened. "May I ask why?" The officer's jaw set. "Because I asked you to." Malik nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, thumb already moving. The screen lit his palm. Recording. The officer noticed. His eyes narrowed. "You filming me?" "For my safety," Malik said. Paws stretched. Night insects buzzed loud enough to sound like static. "You match the description of someone involved in a robbery," the officer said. Malik blinked. "What description?" The officer smiled thinly. "Tall. Hoodie. Wrong place, wrong time." Malik looked down at himself. "Sure. School backpack on the back seat." "That doesn't sound specific," Malik said. The officer's smile disappeared. "Hands on the hood." Malik complied, phone still running, camera tilted but catching everything that mattered. The badge, the clenched fist, the reflection of red and blue bouncing off polished metal. Another cruiser pulled up behind them. Doors opened. A second officer joined, arms crossed, eyes bored. "What's going on?" the second officer asked. "Kids being difficult," the first officer said. I'm cooperating, Malik said quickly. I just want to know why I was stopped. The first officer grabbed Malik's wrist, twisting it just enough to make a point. Malik sucked in a breath but didn't yell. Phone shook. The camera caught the squeeze. Stop resisting, the officer said. I'm not resisting, Malik said. His voice trembled anyway. The second officer shifted his weight. Just do what he says, man. Make it easy. Malik stared at the hood. He could smell warm metal and dust. His phone buzzed. Upload complete. Turn the camera off, the first officer said. No, Malik said. The word surprised him as much as it did the officer. The grip tightened, then loosened. Beat passed. The street stayed quiet. No neighbors came out. No one filmed from a porch. The officer stepped back abruptly. You're free to go, he snapped. But don't let me catch you again. Malik turned slowly, keeping his hands visible. Am I being charged with anything? The officer didn't answer. He just stared until Malik got the message. Malik slid back into the car, hands shaking now that he could feel them. He started the engine. As he pulled away, he glanced at the mirror. The cruiser stayed put, lights off, watching. His phone vibrated again. A notification bloomed across the screen. Your video is live. Malik swallowed, eyes burning, and drove home knowing nothing would be the same. By morning, Malik's phone felt heavier than it had the night before. He woke to vibrations stacking like aftershocks, notifications flooding the screen until it glowed warm against his palm. Messages from friends, strangers, names he didn't recognize. The video had jumped overnight, carried by shares and captions that argued, grieved, and demanded answers all at once. Malik sat on the edge of his bed listening to his mother move in the kitchen, the ordinary sounds of home pressing against something fragile. He wondered when the world had decided his fear was property and refused to give it back. At school, the hallway buzz followed him like a weather system. Whispers bent around lockers. Phones tilted toward him, then away. A teacher paused too long when she saw his name on the attendance sheet. Malik kept his head down, but the glances found him anyway. During lunch, his friend Jordan slid into the seat across from him. Eyes wide, voice low, saying everyone had seen it and the comments were getting ugly. Some laughed. Others argued. A few warned him to delete everything before it was too late. Malik chewed silently, tasting metal beneath his tongue, and fear stayed. The video crossed 1 million views before last period. A local reporter emailed. A national activist reposted. The police department issued a statement calling the stop brief and professional. Malik read it twice, pulse climbing, watching words smooth the edges off his night. When the bell rang, the principal asked him to come to the office, smiling carefully, explaining they wanted to ensure everyone felt safe. The room smelled of coffee and disinfectant, calm, staged like a set. Malik noticed how no one asked what safety meant for him, or why the video scared adults more than bruises it caused. At home, his parents argued in the kitchen with the radio on low. His mother wanted him quiet, protected. His father wanted daylight and names. Malik stood between them, phone buzzing again, a producer from Channel 8 asking for a call. He felt pulled apart by love aimed in opposite directions, each warning carrying its own truth and its own fear. They sat at the table finally, hands wrapped around cold mugs, breathing carefully. Malik nodded at both, agreeing without promising, already exhausted. Outside, a cruiser rolled past, slow enough to be noticed. It didn't stop, but it lingered there. That night, Malik scrolled until the comments blurred. Support sat beside threats, praise beside denial. People argued about policy and posture while his hands remembered the squeeze. He muted words he couldn't carry, then unmuted a message from a civil rights attorney offering help without guarantees. The honesty steadied him more than promises would have. He replied slowly, choosing clarity over anger, facts over fury, breathing between sentences. Across town, someone clipped his video for the evening news. Malik closed his eyes as the upload bar filled again. He knew momentum cuts both ways. And he was already in motion. Sleep came in pieces. When morning broke, his face stared back from screens at the bus stop, the grocery store, the gym. The department's union president went on air, tone polished, warning against rushes to judgment. Malik listened, jaw tight, learning how language could press blame into a pocket and call it balance. Counselor emailed the school. An officer emailed his father. Both sounded reasonable. Reasonable, Malik realized, was how pressure dressed itself. He packed his backpack, steady hands learning a new weight. Outside, cameras waited without asking permission. Malik stepped forward anyway. Because silence had already failed him. Jordan called as Malik reached the bus stop, voice shaking with pride and worry mixed. They talked about comments about teachers, about how fast things moved. A siren wailed somewhere distant. Malik watched commuters pretend not to stare, pretending to, practicing the posture of normal while history pressed close. His phone chimed again. Channel 8 confirmed an interview request for tonight. Malik texted back yes, then stopped, then sent it anyway. The bus arrived late. Relief felt temporary. He climbed aboard, choosing visibility over comfort. Outside the day watched. And Malik kept his eyes open. For what came next. Always. The interview lights were hotter than he expected. Makeup dusted his face without asking. The producer spoke gently, promised fairness, warned of backlash. Malik answered carefully, telling the truth plain and slow. He felt smaller on the chair, larger on the screen, a strange doubling he didn't yet understand. When the cameras cut, his hands shook. A Chiron named him teen driver. He noticed what it left out. Outside, night gathered again, familiar and changed. Malik exhaled, bracing for echoes. Somewhere, officers watched the same screen. And the story kept moving. Forward whether he was ready or not. By the end of the day, Malik understood exposure as a force, not a favor. It pulled allies close and enemies closer. His phone rested face down now. He needed the quiet. Tomorrow would bring statements and meetings and choices. Tonight brought breath, and the knowledge that the camera had given him something back. Still, sleep waited like a question. Malik turned off the lamp, listening for sirens that did not come. He knew the calm was borrowed. Tomorrow the city would answer back. And he would have to answer too. In daylight, on record. With no edits. At last. The interview room smelled like lemon wipes and old carpet. Malik noticed both before he noticed the clock, which ticked too loudly on the far wall. He sat straight-backed in a plastic chair, hands folded, phone face down on the table like a truce he didn't trust. Across from him, two men waited with folders closed, expressions neutral in a way that felt practiced. A seal on the wall announced internal affairs in gold letters that caught the light and gave nothing back. Malik Carter, the man on the left said, smiling thinly. We appreciate you coming in. Am I required to be here? Malik asked. The smile tightened. Voluntary. We just want to hear your side. My side is on the video, Malik said. The second man, older, gray at the temples, cleared his throat. Videos can be misleading without context. Malik breathed through his nose. What context makes grabbing my wrist okay? Pages rustled. The clock ticked. We're here to determine whether officers followed procedure, the older man said. Not to debate feelings. They told me I matched a description, Malik said. What description? The younger man opened his folder, careful, slow. Tall male. Dark clothing. In the area. That's not a description, Malik said. That's a guess. The younger man nodded, as if conceding a small point. Perception matters in the field. My perception, Malik said, was fear. The older man leaned back. Fear isn't evidence. Malik stared at the seal. Gold letters. Authority polished until it shone. The camera is evidence. The younger man clasped his hands. We've reviewed the footage. It doesn't show excessive force. You don't see the squeeze? Malik asked. The order to turn it off. The older man tilted his head. Officers are permitted to control a scene. I was the scene, Malik said quietly. The younger man sighed, as if burdened by patience. Let's keep this productive. Malik laughed once, sharp. You called me difficult. The older man frowned. The report says, uncooperative. I asked a question, Malik said. The younger man scribbled. Questions can escalate situations. So can hands, Malik said. Silence settled again. Malik felt it like pressure in his ears. He remembered his father's advice about rooms like this. They make time do the work for them. He didn't rush. We have statements, the older man said finally. 2 officers corroborate each other. Of course they do, Malik said. The younger man looked up. Careful. With what? Malik asked. The truth. The older man folded his hands. This process protects everyone. Who does it protect me from? Malik asked. The men exchanged a glance. The younger one answered. From misunderstanding. Malik shook his head. You're misunderstanding me on purpose. The older man stood, signaling a break. We'll be in touch. Outside, the hallway felt colder. Malik's attorney, Ms. Renee Watkins, waited by a window, blazer sharp, eyes kind and tired. She listened as Malik spoke, not interrupting, nodding at the right moments. When he finished, she exhaled. They're building a wall of language, she said. Procedure. Perception. Context. It's how harm disappears. Do they have to be this calm? Malik asked. Yes, she said. Calm is how they keep control. At school the next day, the calm arrived wearing policies. A counselor called Malik in to discuss disruption. The word sat between them like a paper cut. Malik asked what rule he'd broken. The counselor talked about focus, about safety, about community standards. Malik heard none of his own words echoed back. So I'm punished for being recorded, Malik said. No one said punished, the counselor said quickly. Just supported. A notice followed. Temporary removal from student activities. Pending review. Malik folded it into his pocket, feeling heat rise behind his eyes. In the hallway, a teacher squeezed his shoulder and whispered, Hang in there. Another avoided his gaze. Both felt like judgments. Home, Ms. Watkins called with updates. The department closed the initial review, she said. No violations found. Malik laughed, bitter. Already. They moved fast, she said. That's a signal. What kind? That we need to slow them down. They filed a complaint anyway. Requests for records. Radio logs. Bodycam. The city replied with extensions and redactions. Malik learned how time could be weaponized without raising a hand. His phone buzzed with messages from kids he didn't know, stories that matched his like mirrors. He saved them, unsure why, just knowing they mattered. A press conference aired that evening. The chief spoke about trust, about partnerships. Malik watched from the couch, his mother's hand on his knee. The chief said the officers followed procedure. Malik mouthed the words along with him, sick with how familiar they sounded. They're saying it enough, Malik said. So it sticks. Ms. Watkins texted a plan. Community meeting. Civilian review board. Patterns, not incidents. Malik felt something shift. Fear stretching into focus. Outside, a cruiser idled, engine low. Malik watched it through the window until it rolled on. He picked up his phone, not to post, not to scroll, but to write. Words they used. He understood then. The camera was only the beginning. The record had to be longer, louder, impossible to fold away. And he was done waiting for permission to keep it. The first threat arrived disguised as advice. Keep your head down, the message read. You don't want trouble. Malik stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then locked the phone and set it face down on his desk. Morning light cut through the blinds, striping the room in pale bars. He counted them until his breathing slowed. His backpack sat open by the door, unfinished homework peeking out like a reminder of a life that expected him to keep pace. He zipped it closed anyway, choosing weight over neatness, certainty over ease. At the bus stop, a cruiser idled across the street. Not close enough to stop him. Close enough to be seen. Malik met the windshield with his eyes and held it. The cruiser rolled forward after a moment, slow, deliberate. Jordan arrived late, breathless, whispering about screenshots and group chats, and a rumor that the school might handle Malik if he didn't calm things down. Malik nodded, grateful for the company, angry at the word calm. Inside the school, the halls felt narrower. A security guard lingered near his locker, posture casual, gaze anything but. Malik kept moving. In English class, the lesson was about unreliable narrators. Malik laughed once under his breath, earning a look from the teacher that asked for silence and gave none. He took notes carefully, handwriting tighter than usual, as if order on paper could quiet his head. At lunch, a girl he barely knew slid a folded note across the table. "Thank you," it said. Malik folded it smaller and tucked it away. A boy 2 seats down muttered something about clout. Malik didn't look up. Attention had edges now. He felt them everywhere. The afternoon brought a meeting. Ms. Watkins joined by speakerphone, the vice principal speaking gently about options. Malik heard words like pause and de-escalation. He asked whether officers would be paused from patrol. The room went quiet. The vice principal cleared his throat and talked about jurisdiction. Malik watched the ceiling fan turn and wondered how many rooms like this existed, how many versions of him sat in them, asked to be patient while time worked against them. After school, Malik walked instead of taking the bus. He needed air. Halfway home, a truck slowed beside him. A voice called his name wrong on purpose. Malik kept walking. The truck peeled away laughing. His hands shook when he reached his street. Mrs. Alvarez waved from her porch, worry softening her face. Malik waved back and kept going, learning how to be visible without inviting questions he couldn't answer. At home, his mother had the radio on low again. His father sat at the table, bills spread out like a map to nowhere. The civil case meant hours missed at work. The school notice meant fewer scholarships, maybe. Malik felt the cost settle on his shoulders, heavy and warm. He apologized without meaning to. His parents told him not to. All 3 new apologies didn't change numbers. Night brought its own chorus. Comments multiplied. A fake account posted his address. Ms. Watkins moved fast, filing takedowns, calling contacts. Malik watched the posts disappear one by one, knowing copies lived elsewhere. He paced the living room until his mother told him to sit. He sat. The floor felt steadier than the couch. A message arrived from a number he didn't recognize. "They did it to me too," it read. "Last year. Same guys." Malik stared, heart pounding. He wrote back carefully. The replies came fast, fragments of fear and anger and paperwork that went nowhere. Malik asked if they'd filmed. The answer came after a long pause. "Well, they talked until midnight." Malik learned names, dates, the way reports changed hands and came back empty. He felt less alone and more responsible at the same time. When he finally slept, he dreamed of ticking clocks and gold seals that melted when he touched them. The next day, Ms. Watkins drove Malik to a community meeting at a church basement that smelled like coffee and old wood. Folding chairs filled quickly. Cameras perched at the back. People spoke in turns. Stories overlapping, patterns emerging. Malik listened, recording only notes now. Words that echoed his own night back to him with different endings. An older man squeezed his shoulder and said, "Don't let them make you small." Malik swallowed hard and nodded. Outside, reporters waited. Malik answered 2 questions and declined 3. A police union spokesperson passed by without looking at him. Patrol car crawled past the curb. Malik felt his chest tighten, then loosen. He knew this feeling now. He could name it. That mattered. Back home, Jordan called voice cracked. Someone had tagged Malik in a meme. Malik muted the app and focused on the sound of his father washing dishes. Water ran. Plates clinked. Ordinary things persisted. Malik opened a notebook and wrote dates in a clean column. Beneath them, phrases. Match description. Uncooperative. Procedure. He underlined the last one twice. When the sun set, Malik stepped onto the porch. The street was quiet again, deceptively so. He lifted his phone not to film but to check the time. A cruiser passed at the end of the block and didn't slow. Malik breathed out. Being seen had a cost. He felt it everywhere, in his sleep, his school, his home. But it had given him something too, a map. Patterns. A direction that wasn't backwards. Malik went inside and locked the door, ready for tomorrow to test him again. He would keep the record. He would pay attention. He would not disappear to make this easier for anyone. The spreadsheet looked harmless at first. Rows, columns, neutral colors. Malik leaned over Ms. Watkins's laptop as if proximity could make the truth appear faster. Names were redacted, but dates weren't. Locations weren't. Outcomes weren't. The pattern emerged the way weather does. Slow until it isn't. Same corridor. Same shift. Same phrasing in reports, repeated with a confidence that felt rehearsed. They call this coincidence, Ms. Watkins said. I call it muscle memory. Malik traced a finger down the screen, stopping at a familiar block. That's my street. Ms. Watkins nodded. And here's another from last year. And one before that. Why didn't anything happen? Malik asked. Because each one was framed as an incident, she said. Incidents don't talk to each other. Patterns do. The community meeting grew louder by the minute. Folding chairs scraped. Microphones squealed. The church basement pulsed with heat and impatience. Malik sat near the aisle, notebook open, pen moving in tight strokes. When his name was called, the room quieted in a way that startled him. He stood anyway. I'm not here because I wanted to be, Malik said. His voice found its lane and stayed there. I'm here because this keeps happening. Not just to me. He told his story without adjectives, letting facts carry the weight. When he finished, applause came uneven and strong. A woman in the back shouted, "Say it again." Malik didn't. He didn't need to. A city council member spoke next, tone careful, promising review and transparency. Malik wrote process in the margin and circled it. The police union representative followed, warning against narratives that endangered officers. Malik watched Ms. Watkins's jaw tighten. He felt the room split along familiar lines, fear for authority versus fear of authority, each side claiming safety as its language. Side cameras waited again. Malik declined statements, pointing instead to Ms. Watkins. She spoke about data, about consistency, about accountability. A reporter asked Malik how it felt to be a symbol. He answered honestly, "Heavy." The reporter nodded as if that explained everything. At school, the review board scheduled a hearing. The email was polite, the date distant. Malik learned to read delays like weather forecasts. Jordan joked about calendars becoming weapons. Malik smiled and kept writing dates. The documents arrived in waves. Radio logs with timestamps shaved thin. Body cam clips that started late and ended early. Emails that said little while implying much. Malik sat at the kitchen table night after night. His mother bringing tea he didn't drink. His father hovering without speaking. Ms. Watkins coached him through the language, translating bureaucratic fog into meaning. Malik learned how truth can be sliced into pieces too small to recognize unless you lay them side by side. A journalist named Elena reached out, careful and direct. She'd covered use of force cases for years. She asked for permission to connect Malik's stop to others. Malik asked Ms. Watkins. They talked risk. They talked reach. Malik agreed. Exposure had already charged its price. Withholding wouldn't refund it. Elena's article landed on a Tuesday. The headline avoided Malik's name and centered the data. The comments exploded anyway. Malik read none of them. He watched the city's response instead. A press release announcing an internal review of prior complaints. Malik recognized the move. Back to procedure. Back to control. The Civilian Review Board convened in a municipal building that smelled like carpet cleaner and caution. Malik testified under fluorescent lights. He spoke plainly. Board members asked about tone and timing. Malik answered about grip and words. When an officer testified after him, the language returned. Perception, compliance, escalation. Malik noticed the symmetry. He noticed where the camera angled away. During a break, a man approached Malik in the hallway. He introduced himself as a former officer. He spoke softly. "They taught us to write reports like that," he said. "Keeps everyone safe." "Everyone?" Malik asked. The man looked away. "The ones inside." That night, a letter arrived from the city's attorneys offering mediation. Quiet resolution. No admission. Monetary terms discussed as if pain had a price tag that could be folded into a budget. Malik felt his chest tighten. Ms. Watkins laid out options without pressure. Accept and move on. Decline and press forward. Each path carried cost. "What happens if we say no?" Malik asked. "They'll fight," Ms. Watkins said. Slowly. "And if we say yes? They'll call it closure." Malik stared at the letter. He thought of the messages he'd saved, the dates he'd underlined, the church basement heat. He thought of the kid who hadn't filmed. He thought of the officer's hand and the word procedure floating like a shield. "I don't want a quiet ending," Malik said. Ms. Watkins nodded. "Then we don't take the quiet path." The union responded with a press conference. Words hardened. Supporters countered with a march. Malik stood at the edge, not leading, not hiding, listening to chants braid anger and hope. Police lined the route, faces unreadable. Malik recognized two. His pulse spiked, then steadied. He wrote their names later. At home, Malik pinned the spreadsheet printout to his wall. It looked different there, domestic and undeniable. Patterns don't vanish when you stop looking at them. He slept better that night, not because fear left, but because purpose arrived. The next morning, Ms. Watkins called with news. "One officer requested counsel," she said. "Another asked for a continuance." "What does that mean?" Malik asked. "It means pressure," she said. "It means cracks." Malik closed his notebook and set his pen down. The city hummed outside, ordinary and complicit. Patterns don't break themselves. But they do respond to light, to time, to records kept with care. Malik picked the pen back up. There was more to write. The hearing room was smaller than Malik expected, narrower, as if the building itself wanted to compress what happened inside. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A city seal stared down from the wall, familiar now, less intimidating than it once had been. Malik took his seat beside Ms. Watkins. Notebook closed this time. He already knew the story. Today was about whether anyone else would admit it. Across the room, the officers sat with counsel. One stared straight ahead, jaw locked. The other shifted, fingers tapping a rhythm that betrayed him. Malik watched the tapping and felt a strange calm. Tells were just facts with bad disguises. The board chair opened with formalities. Time limits. Rules of conduct. Respect. Malik heard the words like background music, steady and rehearsed. When Ms. Watkins spoke, she stood and placed exhibits on the table with care. Malik recognized them all. His video, radio logs, body cam clips, transcripts, the spreadsheet distilled into charts that told the truth without raising their voice. The city's attorney objected early. Speculative. Irrelevant. Prejudicial. The chair sustained some, overruled others. Malik felt each decision land like a small stone in a scale. Ms. Watkins played the video first. Malik watched himself on the screen, hands visible, voice steadier than he remembered. The squeeze came and went. The order to turn it off echoed in the room. No one spoke while it played. The tapping stopped. The first officer testified. He described a routine stop, a cooperative subject who became argumentative. Ms. Watkins asked him to define argumentative. He talked about tone. She asked him to point to the moment Malik refused a lawful order. He hesitated. She rolled the video back, frame by frame. The officer cleared his throat. I felt the situation escalating, he said. Based on what? Ms. Watkins asked. Experience. Experience with whom? She asked. The officer glanced at his attorney. Suspects. Mr. Carter was not a suspect, Ms. Watkins said. Correct. Was. At the time. Correct, she pressed. Yes. The second officer took the stand. His voice wavered despite himself. He said he was there for backup, that he observed resistance. Ms. Watkins asked him to identify the resistance on the body cam. The clip showed Malik standing still, hands visible. The officer shifted. Body cams don't capture everything, he said. Neither do reports, Ms. Watkins said. That's why we compare. She laid out the radio log. Timestamps didn't match the report. The officer explained stress. She laid out policy. The officer explained discretion. The word procedure hovered, finally losing its shine. A board member asked Malik to speak. He stood. The room felt smaller again, but he stood anyway. I was scared, Malik said. I followed the rules I was taught. I asked questions because I didn't understand. That shouldn't be a threat. A board member nodded. Another frowned. Malik continued, careful and plain. He spoke about the pattern without naming anyone else, about the language that erased him. He spoke about school, about nights listening for engines. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. During a break, the city's attorney approached Ms. Watkins with a folded paper. Malik watched the exchange from across the room. Ms. Watkins read, expression unreadable, then shook her head once. The attorney walked away, jaw tight. They offered a settlement, Ms. Watkins whispered when she returned. Now. Malik swallowed. Quiet. Very. Do we have to decide now? They want to stop the record, she said. Malik looked at the officers. One stared at the floor. The other stared at Malik. The tapping resumed, faint and fast. No, Malik said. Not now. The hearing resumed. Ms. Watkins called an expert on policing standards. He spoke about bias, about escalation triggered by recording, about how vague descriptions invite discretion that falls unevenly. The city objected. The chair allowed it. Malik felt something loosen in his chest. Then the crack came. Under questioning, the second officer contradicted his report. Just a line. Just a detail. Ms. Watkins paused, then replayed the clip that proved it wrong. The officer's shoulders sagged. His attorney leaned in, whispering. The room leaned forward. I misspoke, the officer said. Your report misspoke, Ms. Watkins corrected gently. Silence. The chair called for order. Notes scratched. Malik watched the board members exchange looks. Not agreement, consideration. That was enough. By the end, the chair announced a decision would follow. The words landed without drama. No verdict. No applause. The city promised a statement. Malik packed his bag slowly, hands steady. Side cameras surged. Ms. Watkins spoke again, framing the day as a step, not an ending. At home, Malik sat at the table and stared at the wall where the spreadsheet still hung. His mother brought soup. He ate without tasting. His father asked if it went okay. Malik nodded. It went. His phone buzzed. Ms. Watkins, we did what we could today. Another message followed, unknown number. Thank you for not backing down. Malik lay in bed later, the hum of lights replaced by the quiet of night. He replayed the hearing not as fear, but as sequence. Facts connected. Language exposed. The record grew heavier, more real. Tomorrow would bring outcomes and statements and spin. Tonight brought rest he hadn't earned but needed. Outside, a cruiser passed without slowing. Malik noticed and then let it go. He turned on his side, hand on the notebook by his bed. Whatever the board decided, the hearing had changed the shape of things. The quiet offer, the contradiction, cracks, justice Malik understood didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in moments you refused to trade away. The decision arrived on a Thursday, buried beneath weather alerts and school reminders, its subject line plain enough to miss if Malik hadn't been waiting for it. He opened the email at the kitchen table, Ms. Watkins on speaker. His parents flanking him like anchors. The language was careful, measured, written to sound inevitable. Findings, violations, discipline pending. Malik read it twice, then a third time aloud, voice steady until it wasn't. One officer would be suspended without pay, the email said, pending termination proceedings. The other had resigned effective immediately. The department would revise policy regarding citizen recording during stops. Training would be updated. Public statement would follow. His mother covered her mouth. His father exhaled a long breath he'd been holding for weeks. That's something, Malik said. It is, Ms. Watkins replied. It's not everything. The public statement came an hour later, posted and reposted with surgical speed. It acknowledged lapses without naming them, thanked the community for patience, reaffirmed commitment to trust. Malik watched the words travel, noticing how quickly some people declared victory and others declared nothing had changed. Both felt incomplete. He turned off the phone and let the quiet settle. At school, the reaction split the halls again. A few teachers congratulated him in low voices. Others avoided the subject entirely. The notice about student activities disappeared without explanation. Malik didn't ask. He felt lighter without the permission slip. During lunch, Jordan slapped the table and grinned, relief breaking through weeks of worry. Malik smiled back, then felt the smile falter when a siren wailed outside. Too close, too sudden. He breathed through it, naming the sound until it passed. The union held a press conference that afternoon. Malik didn't watch. Ms. Watkins summarized instead. Concern about morale, disagreement with findings, intent to appeal. Consequences, Malik learned, invited counter-consequences. Nothing ended cleanly. That night, Malik dreamed of hallways and clocks again. This time the clocks stopped when he touched them. He woke before dawn, chest tight, and went for a run while the street still slept. His legs burned. The rhythm steadied him. When a cruiser turned the corner ahead, Malik slowed but didn't stop. The cruiser passed. Malik kept running. Emails arrived from people he'd never met. Some thanked him. Some warned him to stay vigilant. One came from the kid who hadn't filmed, saying his case had been reopened. Malik closed his eyes and let the word reopened echo. That was the shape of change he trusted. Not sudden, not complete, but real enough to cut through old closures. The city announced a listening tour. Malik was invited to speak. He declined the first date and accepted the second. Boundaries felt new and necessary. Ms. Watkins helped him draft remarks that told the truth without handing it over. You don't owe them your pain, she reminded him. Malik nodded and edited until the words fit. The listening session took place in a high school auditorium that smelled like varnish and memory. Malik sat on stage beside city officials, lights warm on his face. He spoke about patterns again, about policy written to sound neutral and land uneven. He spoke about recording as protection, not provocation. He spoke about cost. When applause came, it surprised him. He accepted it and sat down before it could ask for more. Afterward, a woman approached with a photo of her son. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Malik took the photo and returned it, careful. The exchange stayed with him on the drive home, a weight that wasn't fear. The officers' names began to fade from headlines. Malik's name didn't. He learned how notoriety lingers, how strangers feel entitled to pieces of you because you stood in the light. He practiced saying no. He practiced resting. Therapy appointments became routine. His counselor helped him name the hypervigilance without surrendering to it. Your body learned fast, she said. We can teach it something else. On a Sunday afternoon, Malik sat with his parents on the porch, the air thick with summer. A cruiser rolled by and didn't slow. Malik noticed the absence like a bruise healing. His father asked if Malik regretted filming. Malik thought about the hearing room, the spreadsheet, the reopened case. No, he said. I regret that it was necessary. Later, Ms. Watkins called with news of the appeal. It would take months. Malik listened, then asked a question that surprised him. Can we make the policy public? She smiled through the phone. We can. They drafted. They pushed. The department released the revised guidelines with a memo. It wasn't radical. It was clear. Malik printed it and taped it next to the spreadsheet on his wall. Consequences could be incremental and still matter. The resignation became official. The suspension became termination. The city avoided the word fired. Malik avoided correcting them. Words did their own work. That night, Malik walked the block alone, hands loose at his sides. He passed Mrs. Alvarez's house and waved. She waved back, pride plain. Malik felt tired in a way that meant progress had happened. He stood at the corner where it began and watched traffic move on, ordinary and relentless. Justice hadn't erased the fear. It hadn't given him back the weeks he'd lost or the sleep he'd borrowed. It had done something quieter. It had shifted the balance just enough that the street felt different under his feet. Malik went home and wrote the date in his notebook. Under it, he wrote one line and underlined it once. This mattered. Malik Carter stepped onto the stage of the youth forum with the same nervous weight he had felt during the hearing, but it felt different now. The room was filled with teenagers, parents, and community leaders, all gathered in folding chairs under the glow of fluorescent lights. He could hear the faint buzz of microphones and the rustle of paper, a sound that seemed to echo the rhythm of his heartbeat. The camera from the local news crew sat in the corner, lens pointed but unobtrusive, and Malik realized this time he wasn't alone. He wasn't being targeted. He was being witnessed. He adjusted the microphone and cleared his throat. I'm not here because I wanted attention, he began, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. I'm here because I had to be seen. Not just by the police, not just by the city, but by all of us. The words felt heavy, loaded with nights of fear, weeks of uncertainty, and months of waiting. He paused, letting them sink into the room. Eyes tracked him, some curious, some skeptical, some quietly nodding in understanding. Malik spoke about the day he was stopped, the hand on his wrist, the command to turn off the camera. He didn't dramatize. He stated facts, letting the emotion sit between the sentences. He described the officer's contradictory statements, the internal review that tried to sanitize reality, the spreadsheet of patterns that Ms. Watkins had helped him compile. He showed the forum what the camera captured, the truth framed in digital light, undeniable yet simple. Recording it wasn't bravery, he said. It was survival. And if it teaches anything, it's this. Being seen matters. It gives power to the powerless, clarity to the ignored, and voice to the silenced. He looked across the room, seeing faces he didn't know, and noticed that some mirrored his own exhaustion and resolve. For a moment, Malik felt a bridge form between his world and theirs. A girl in the audience raised her hand. Didn't you feel scared? She asked. Malik nodded. I was terrified, he said. Every second I kept my hands visible, every second I held that phone. I wondered if it would make things worse. But I also knew it could make things right, not just for me but for others like me. Being afraid isn't weakness. It's recognition that what's happening is wrong. Another teen spoke, softly but firmly. How do you keep going when adults fail you? Malik smiled, small and tired. I keep going by remembering that systems can be changed, not alone but together, he said. By trusting the people who do care. And by never forgetting that silence lets harm continue. He glanced at Ms. Watkins in the corner. She gave a small nod, pride and approval hidden in the crease of her brow. The forum turned to discussion. Malik stayed on stage, listening, occasionally answering questions, sometimes just nodding. He heard stories similar to his: parents who had been ignored, teens followed for no reason, police actions disguised as policy. Patterns emerged in voices other than his. For the first time, the weight he had carried felt collective, less isolating. After the session, Malik stepped outside. Night had fallen. The street outside was familiar. The same one where he had first felt the squeeze on his wrist, the one where the first cruiser had passed slowly and deliberately. The houses were quiet now, windows dark, porch lights casting soft halos on the asphalt. He breathed deeply, the air carrying faint scents of summer grass and distant traffic. A neighbor waved. Malik waved back. A teen approached him, shy, holding a smartphone. "I watched your video," she said. It helped me." Malik nodded. That was why he had kept filming. That was why it mattered. The journey had been costly. Anxiety lingered, a shadow Malik knew would never fully leave him. Sleep sometimes came uneven, and the hum of engines reminded him that fear is not easily undone. Yet he also understood resilience. He had witnessed the impact of truth, the subtle power of documentation, and the way a camera could protect and amplify. Malik walked home slowly, hands in pockets, notebook tucked under his arm. He stopped at the corner, looking down the block where it all began. The street felt different now. Not safer, not yet, but altered by exposure and attention. The officers had faced consequences. The department had revised policy. His family and attorney had navigated the channels of power to make a dent in an unyielding system. The work was far from finished, but the foundation was set. At home, Malik pinned a printout of the revised guidelines next to his spreadsheet on the wall. The two documents represented effort, persistence, and accountability. He sat at the desk, pen in hand, writing down dates and actions, planning next steps. The camera had given him more than footage. It had given him proof, a voice, and a measure of control in a world that had tried to erase him. Later Malik went to bed, the city quiet outside. He thought of the forum, of the teens whose stories mirrored his own, of the weight of witnessing and being witnessed. He slept deeply that night, knowing the world was imperfect but that he had carved a space of truth within it. And in that space, he had found something stronger than fear. He had found himself, visible and unbroken, and the beginnings of change that could outlast any one person. Months had passed since Malik's forum speech. The summer heat had faded, replaced by the crisp smell of autumn in the air. School had settled into routines again, though Malik's world felt permanently altered. He walked the hallways with awareness now. Not fear exactly, but vigilance sharpened by experience. His phone vibrated differently in his pocket. Messages no longer carried only danger. They carried gratitude, connection, and sometimes new calls for help. One morning, Malik met Jordan outside the school entrance. "You look different," Jordan said, squinting in the pale sunlight. Malik shrugged. "Tired," he said, half joking. Also, aware. They laughed quietly, the sound fragile but real. The bus ride was silent, both thinking about everything and nothing. At school, teachers were more cautious, some more supportive, and peers regarded him with a mix of curiosity and respect. The notoriety of the video had faded from news cycles, but Malik's name still carried weight among students. He noticed how kids he'd never spoken to now gave subtle signs of acknowledgement. A nod, a quiet smile, a shared glance of solidarity. Recognition, he realized, was its own kind of power. In history class, Malik's teacher introduced a lesson on civil rights movements. Malik's mind wandered, connecting dots between what he was learning and what he had lived. He realized that systemic patterns weren't just words in textbooks. They were echoes of the same forces he'd confronted, replicated in new shapes, new contexts. He made notes in his notebook, drawing parallels between legislation, policy, and human behavior, understanding that knowledge alone wasn't enough, but it was essential. After school, Malik attended a community meeting with Ms. Watkins and several other youth leaders. This time he was not the witness, he was the guide. Teens shared their stories of profiling, harassment, and microaggressions. Malik listened, asked questions, validated experiences, and connected each story to a broader pattern of institutional behavior. The camera wasn't rolling, but Malik felt the same gravity as when it had. Truth didn't need red lights to illuminate it. He had become its lens. At home that evening, Malik opened his laptop. An email from a local documentary producer caught his attention. "We want to feature your story for a nationwide youth project. Not sensationalized, just honest." Malik read it twice. His parents hovered, cautious. "Is this safe?" his mother asked. Malik considered. He remembered the fear, the threats, the uncertainty, but also the impact. "It's worth it," he said finally. The weeks that followed involved meetings, interviews, and revisions. Malik realized how much work went into ensuring a story remained truthful while protecting those involved. He learned to negotiate, to speak firmly, to protect the narrative from distortion. The city officials and journalists involved respected the process. No longer did Malik feel like he was being watched. He felt like he was shaping what would be seen. One night, Malik walked the street where it all began. The same corner, the same cracked sidewalks, the same houses watching silently. He paused and imagined the officers' cruisers that had once loomed there. He didn't feel fear now, only memory. A reminder that vigilance is necessary, but courage endures. His parents joined him silently, standing a step behind, shadows stretching long in the streetlights. Malik lifted his phone. He scrolled to the original video. Over 1 million views. Comments of support and advocacy. Some arguments still lingered, people still debating the nuances of authority and compliance. But underneath it all was truth. He had captured it, shared it, and changed the conversation. He tapped the screen, leaving a brief comment. "Keep fighting. Keep recording. Keep seeing." In school, he began mentoring younger students interested in civil rights, media literacy, and community advocacy. He helped them understand that cameras could be shields and voices could be weapons, but responsibility was the key. Each session ended with Malik reminding them, documentation doesn't erase fear, it makes it visible. And visible fear is the first step toward justice. One afternoon, Malik received a letter in the mail. A formal acknowledgement from the city. His complaint had contributed to the development of new training modules and a policy review. The officers involved had faced disciplinary action, but more importantly, the department recognized that accountability was ongoing, not a one-time event. Malik smiled faintly, understanding the weight of slow, systemic change. At home, Malik pinned the letter above the spreadsheet on his wall, side by side with a revised policy. The visual reminded him of every small victory, every act of persistence, and every moment of courage. He looked around his room and felt the quiet pride that comes not from attention, but from survival, resilience, and the knowledge that he had shaped something larger than himself. As night fell, Malik sat on his bed, journal open, pen in hand. He wrote about patterns, about exposure, about lessons learned. He wrote about fear, courage, and responsibility. And in the quiet of his room, he understood that while systemic injustice might never fully disappear, truth captured, shared, and acted upon had the power to ripple forward, changing communities, shaping policies, and most importantly, giving a voice to those who might otherwise remain unseen. Malik turned off the light and lay back, listening to the hum of the city outside. For the first time in months, sleep came easily. Not because the world was safe, but because he had carved a space for truth and resilience within it. The camera had given him evidence. The experience had given him courage. And now he could pass both forward.